All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Weiss. I'm director of the Workforce Science Project at Northwestern University's Center on Law, Business, and Economics. I am thrilled to welcome you this morning. This is our first morning seminar, I think, ever. We will be examining navigating people analytics careers, where we look not only at careers, but how organizations define the role of people analytics within the organization. As Richard said, please put your LinkedIn in the chat. Also put any questions in the chat. Richard is really good about getting to them and following up on them. And let me introduce Richard, which I probably should have started with, but you probably all know him. He's One Model's Analytics Strategy VP, People Analytics Strategy VP, a key thought leader in people analytics, and has done this amazing service for the community, keeping a list of people analytics job listings, which I've started out the chat with. So I advise all of you, it's an amazing resource. We're fortunate to have a great guest here today, James. So without further ado, I'll hand things over to Richard, who will introduce him.
Thank you so much, Deborah. And we just updated that roles page this morning, so it is fresh. So if you're on the market, if you're looking for roles, make sure to take a look and see what's going on over there. But thank you, as always, to Northwestern, the Workforce Science Project, for putting on this webinar series. It's been a ton of fun to meet people, get connected with folk, and to really get job seekers and people in the market connected to open roles. I think one of the most exciting thing, though, is meeting a full diversity of people from across the world around their background in people analytics, what they're up to, their careers. And it's what makes me so excited to talk to James today. So with us today, we have James Fenlon, who is the Global People Analytics Leader at Wise. He's got a couple open roles. He's had a great career in people analytics. I'm really excited to talk to you, James. Welcome to the show, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Richard. I'm excited to be here. It's going to be great to talk about people analytics at Wise, definitely.
Fantastic. So let's start things off. One of the things, James, I noticed from your background, you actually started your career in people analytics and have built and grown your career there. I would love to hear about your career, and then let's double background kind of what that means too.
Yeah, definitely. So I started people analytics. I guess my educational background is probably how I got into it a little bit more. So I started sort of exploring people analytics a little bit at university. So I did a sort of a combined honors degree where I explored lots of different subjects, and part of that was both management and also data science. So I explored a little bit around HR as well as in theory. And also explored like applying data science methods in social science and political science in particular. I then went on to do a sort of a pure play organizational analysis HR degree for postgrad, and there I did a full module in people analytics. So that was kind of my first educational intro into people analytics. And as you say, after that, I moved into a people analytics startup that did work in law firms and analyzing people data in law firms, which is really interesting, and then moved on from there. And that's kind of how I originally got interested in it. And it still excites me today. I think it's a really dynamic field. It's always changing, always growing. And it's great to see the growth it's had, which I think your job page as well demonstrates.
That's awesome, James. And it's something I track for people that have kind of come up through the ranks of people analytics, which has been interesting. Because I think maybe 15 years ago, it was kind of everyone kind of had to come in from somewhere else because the field was relatively new, and the leadership teams were kind of just like, well, you led teams in marketing analytics, you led teams in consulting, come on over and lead a team in people analytics. And there's a few people I've kept track of the field, like Tony Trung over at Chime. He's kind of come up and through the ranks at Salesforce all the way through. And James, you as well. So I appreciate that too. And just having built a career in the space, that's exciting to see that's a path now too.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about people analytics is you get such broad coverage across the domain, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on, but you get such big exposure across all the different areas of HR. So it's great if you have an interest in people and people management, because you get to explore all the different aspects of HR in a way that I don't think you can in other functions so much. So that's I think one of the big appeals.
Oh, absolutely. And so Wise. Could you tell us a little bit about Wise for people that might not be familiar? You guys are a startup in the financial services space, but I would love to hear a little bit more about what it is and how you found yourself there.
Yeah, definitely. So we're a fintech. We're definitely a scale up now. We're about 6,000 people globally. And we're in the business of basically making the best way to move and manage money across the world. Um, and I'm hoping we maybe have at least a couple of customers maybe on the webinar. But yeah, give us a shout if you are in the chat. But yeah, we do cross-border payments and we for consumers, for businesses. And we're moving around 5% of the personal cross-border volumes globally. So it's a really exciting growing business that's loved by our customers. So yeah, it's a very exciting place where have a combination of product and tech and as well as servicing. So it's really interesting from a workforce dynamics point of view as well. And I've been there coming up 3 years this month. So yeah.
That's fantastic. And we got pinged at least once here in the chat from someone who's loves Wise.
I love
So
Wise
that's
shout out, which is great to see. Yeah.
so what was it that drew you to Wise? Like what appealed to you? What jumped out at you? And I know that kind of maybe you joined when it was a bit smaller and now it's in that kind of scale up mode. Would love to hear what stood out to you.
Yeah, so I think Wise is an amazing place to work. So and to quote a people analytics stat, we're in the top 25% of tech companies for engagement. So
Love that.
we've got a great employee experience, and that was a big part of the appeal for me. I think also like it's a very interesting place to do people analytics. We're solving for a lot of interesting challenges. Um, we're working in sort of that interesting workforce mix where we have a lot of product folks, product engineers, product managers, as well as compliance folks for a regulated financial company listed on the London Stock Exchange. And also we've got a big servicing arm that is all about giving the best experience to our customers. So it's quite a nice variety. And if you're a people analytics professional, you've got a lot of interesting questions just emerging from that workforce mix. I think also as a culture, it's super, there's a big emphasis on ownership, working autonomously, and you can go after problems when you see them and you can have a lot of impact. So that's part of the appeal and part of the reason that drew me to Wise. And I've loved it ever since. I've stayed for 3 years and I hope to stay for many more. So yeah.
That's great to hear. And James, I've got to ask you this question because one, you've got a global role, and Wise is a global company.
Yeah.
But two, you're actually our first European guest on the show
Oh,
to talk about
okay.
kind of people analytics broadly. And so I've got to ask you the question too about, and this is a bit like asking a fish about water, but could you tell us a little bit about the European market and what that means for people analytics? And I might be putting you on the spot here a little bit with that, but just
Yeah, so
anything you might
European
have to share with the group.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's an interesting question. I'm honored to be the first European guest as well. So I think people analytics in Europe, from my understanding, and this is my opinion, largely like I think we've got a great market in London as in particular. So there's a lot of people analytics folks. Last week, actually, I was at the Insight 222 meeting in Paris, and it was great to connect with some other people analytics leaders. So I definitely think it's an emerging and an important priority in Europe, but I don't think we're quite as mature as potentially you are in the US. But with London, I think being the hub, but I do see a lot of growth in European people analyst roles, and we're growing our European people analyst roles in particular. And I think your job, I know yours is largely UK focused, but you can see sort of the steady growth over time as well in people analytics. So yeah, I think it's an exciting time, but I definitely think we're lower maturity than you see in some of the US companies, which is an interesting question to explore actually.
Yeah, and there's definitely components there too around the kind of the regulatory environment, the ability to kind of activate, but then also just something I've always appreciated about the European market is just that like deep sense of ethics and workers' rights that we could use a little bit more of that in other parts of the world. I'll just leave it at that maybe, but yeah, just really appreciate that perspective, and thank you for letting me pick your brain on that. You gave a shout out to Insight 222, friends of ours. That's a people analytics consultancy that does really great work building the community, developing the community for anyone that's interested, and that's great to hear that meeting went well.
Yeah, it was very good. I think the next in London as well, and they're quarterly for European folks, and I think the US has ones as well, I believe.
Absolutely. They don't let vendors come. So I have not been able to attend one yet, but I'm jealously looking from the outside, and that's why I'm hanging on to your words as you're talking about it. But so let's get into kind of as you built the team. So I would love to hear about Wise. One of the questions we get a lot is like, what does your team look like? How's your team been built? And then really standout successes. Are there things, and this is a moment where I try to pressure people to brag a little bit, Could you tell us something that
Yeah.
you've been really proud of, as well as just talk about your team?
Yeah, so I can cover team sort of structure and how we structure the people analytics team, and it might be worth me setting a little bit of context about where people analytics sits. So we sit in a broader function, which is programs, experience, and analytics, and that's a pretty deliberate move. So we sit with our project managers, our experience folks, our communications folks, and our events folks. So it's a really broad team covering a really broad set of areas across our employee experience. And how we structure ourselves is we have a two-way model basically for analysts, and this is how the team is structured. So we have analysts embedded in COEs in HR. So they work with their project manager as well to make sure that all of our projects are measured for impact and are data-led and data-driven in their approach. So it's a direct partnership between the analyst, the COE, and that COE's PM. And we also have a model where we work with our people partners. So analysts partnering directly with people partners on problems, opportunities in their business function as well. So we structure ourselves both ways, which I think is probably a more unique model, but it's trying to leverage that functional aspect that we're in the programs, experience, and analytics function as well.
That's fantastic. That's one of the first I've heard about a project manager connection. And
Yes.
I've got a PMP background in my history, so I'm always on the lookout for project management people that are in people analytics. Was that something that was designed while you were there, or is that something that is kind of across wise? Could you just talk a little bit more about that project management component?
Definitely the influences from our product analytics function. So people analytics sits in the people team, but we're part of a broader analytics community, which is made up of product analysts, compliance analysts, marketing analysts, analysts from all of our teams. So it was influenced by that, and we want to really be honing in on what are the biggest opportunities for us to go after, and how do we measure the impact of our work and make sure that all our projects are data-led. So similar to how our squads and tribes are set up in a cross-functional way with analysts working with product managers and engineers, we've taken the approach where we want our analysts to be sitting with our PMs, their COEs, to make sure that COEs being data-led in what they're going after, and also having an impact on Wise and its customers, basically.
That's fantastic. And James, I've got to say, I love how many times you've said measure and how
Yeah.
critical that sounds to your team, because and why that wouldn't be more critical to more teams is a bit of an open question. But I love that partnership with the project manager, especially around the management component. That's huge for a people analytics team.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the build out we're doing with some of these open roles, to make sure that every one of our COEs has an analyst that they can rely on to be fully embedded, to understand their priorities, and to give them the love that they deserve, I guess.
That's fantastic. And so could you talk about just size of the team then too? We had a great question from Sophie there. And then sounds like you've got some open roles. So it'd be great to hear about those too.
Yeah. So we're currently a team of 5, including myself. And we have 5 open positions, 3 open positions and 5 positions in total. So a couple of those have now been filled. So we'll be going to a team of 9, not including myself, so 10 including myself. So it's a really exciting growth for us.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's going to be a big team and hopefully driving a lot of impact. That's our aim. And just to finish off Sophie's question, how big is the people? Yeah, so and do they work together and learn from each other? So just to address that directly, yes. So as part of that wider community, we're trying to directly leverage what our other analysts are working on, how they apply analytics in their worlds, and what we can take and use and apply in people team. So to give 2 examples, firstly, we want to learn from marketing analytics, for example, in how we approach our employer branding, to make sure we're measuring the impact of that using some of the marketing mix models that our marketing analytics folks spend a lot of time working on. And on product analytics, when we launch features, we want to experiment and see if they're having the impact on customers that we want them to. So taking that experimentation and applying that also in people team. So there's definitely opportunities for us to leverage that, and we're very keen on doing that. And on that learning point, we have a lot of cross learning opportunities, so hackathons with our other analytics peers and all those kind of things to share and learn.
That's awesome. And then open roles. I was on the
Yeah.
WISE page. I was looking for the people team, and it looks like they're under the analytics team, which I love too. Just
Yes.
on the careers page, could you talk about what are the exact open roles you still have, and who are you looking
Yes.
for?
So two of them are on the website. One of them's not. But I can share more on that as well. So we're looking for three open roles. One's in Austin, which is the senior people scientist. This is kind of an employee listening focus role and really focusing on research. It's to partner directly with the people experience and programs team. So working on our employee listening strategy, working on analyzing our listening data to connect that to business outcomes. That's a big opportunity area we want to pursue. And also working on some other cool areas, for example, how we can apply analytics in people programs, in our events, in our employer branding. There's lots of cool avenues, I think, to explore with that one. The second one is a role in Budapest at the moment. So this is it's a senior people scientist again, for looking at our people services function. So this is the operational engine for HR, and we're in this process where we're building a shared service center. So it's a really exciting opportunity to work on cool projects in that space. It's also a huge function. So you've got everything in there from payroll, tech, people risk and compliance, ER, and operations. So lots of opportunity to do some cool analytics on our service desk data and all those kind of things. And then finally, we're looking for an analyst in London as well. So this is sort of an analyst slash people scientist role. And this is to support our comp and reward team, our reward and global mobility team, working on everything related to compensation, doing some advanced analytics, leveraging some data science in that space. There's a lot of opportunities in that. So I'm pretty excited about that one too. And that one isn't live yet. So that's probably why it's not on the website.
That's fantastic. And so if people know folk on the call here, we can send them your way, or if people are on the call here, I'm sure they'll come find you. But that's those are tremendous roles. That's a big investment though, to go from kind of 5 to 10 on the squad. Could you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what generated that investment, or do you have any tips for people that are trying to grow their team right now about how you made that investment?
Yeah, so I think that investment was because I think we work in a tech company, in a financial tech company. So we need to make sure that we apply the same approach to our product, to our people team that we do to our product. So analyzing everything we're doing, making sure it's having impact on our wisers, on our customers, everything we're doing. So this is where the investment came from. We also want to make sure we're leveraging all the domains in the best way, I guess, and making sure we're exploring every opportunity we can do. So this is partly why we're expanding the coverage as well a little bit. I'm very fortunate. My CPO is an amazing advocate for people analytics. And Richard, you'll know Isabel from your talk at People Analytics World last year. She's an amazing advocate for people analytics, very bought into it, and has grown people analytics teams before. So getting that stakeholder buy-in is really important as well. Something we definitely have here at Wise.
Love that. That's fantastic, James. Okay, so you kind of skipped bragging a little bit, so I'm going to pull you back to it. What's something phenomenal your team's been able to do? What's an impact you've been able to have? And if you feel like you can't share too, you can talk about past ones or something you're proud of within the space.
Yeah, I think, do you know, this is really hard for people, because sometimes we can't share a lot of the cool stuff we do.
Yeah.
But I think to give one example, I think, and this is an example actually I talked about a little bit at People Analytics World last year with Isabel, where we talked about our well-being approach and how we've mapped well-being using employee listening to identify focus areas from this. Because I think when you look at something as big as well-being, it's such a huge space. And there's so many different avenues you can go down and so many different areas you can explore. So we actually used a framework that you made, Richard, on what people say, what people do, and what people think, and use that as a basis to basically map our different wellbeing data sources. We had loads, and then use that as a basis to analyze the data and come up with some areas we wanted to target on. And so we've done that work, and partly why I'm using it as an example is because we're already taking a lot of action in this space and exploring some opportunity areas, like financial well-being is something we're looking at. more and doing more on for our WISEs. And the important part of this work is that we're making sure that what we're doing is moving the metric that originally brought us to that area, if that makes sense. So we're tracking those KPIs moving forward to make sure that they're moving in the right direction, basically, from the work we're doing. So I think that's probably my specific example, but I think there's a lot of exciting areas we're working on, for example, on talent management, doing a lot in this space, flexible working and our real estate footprint. It's really cool in People Team at Wise that we have the workplace team as part of that. So that's an amazing data source to leverage, a lot there, and also doing a lot of work on recruitment. We're a growth company, so it's a focus area for us.
That's awesome. James, thank you so much for sharing. And Maria had the right idea with my next question for you. So as you're thinking about growing and as you've been growing the team over the past 3 years, could you talk about some challenges or maybe some speed bumps you've run into and how your team has gotten past them or how you've grown through them? Just if you could share a little bit about that kind of day-to-day, how the team works on those things.
So I think it's a great question. I think like the biggest challenge for us at the moment, and this is partly why going back to why you're making this investment point, is that at the moment, the team's unable to satisfy the level of demand that we have for people analytics with our existing supply. So that's why I'm pretty excited. We're growing the team in such a way and going to have coverage across all of our people sub-teams. And I think this scale question is hard because we want to make sure that we're scaling our efforts. So we're putting a lot into like, do we have the right tools? Do we have the right skills and all those kind of things to allow us to properly scale the team? And so we're implementing a new people analytics tool. We're changing the way we do our data architecture to give us an ability to leverage both better BI, better self-service, and also some of the advanced analytics, data science stuff we want to do as well.
That's awesome. And yeah, one of the things just to give it a call out, the fact that you've got someone aligned to the comp team, there are so many comp teams that say, well, we have data, we're fine. We don't need help, go help somebody else. And they kind of reject the people analytics team. So it does speak to the credibility and the impact your team has had that the comp team says, yes, we need you too. And they're inviting you in and they're bringing you in. So just a shout out for your team on that, because that's one of those areas that tends to be a holdout for a lot of people analytics teams, and that you're making headway there speaks to your team.
Thank you.
Yeah, so looking at kind of particulars for people. Oh, this is perfect. Krishnan, you're right with me. Somebody must have leaked my questions here, because my next question for you was really around the skills you're looking for. So as you're building your particular team with your people and with your teammates, as you're looking to bring somebody on board, what are some kind of key qualities and key skills you're looking for to further Wise's mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll do sort of, maybe I'll divide this in terms of hard skills and sort of qualities and behaviors. So I think in terms of hard skills, probably, I'd loosely say this is kind of consultancy partnering style skills. So you can hear a problem from a stakeholder or an opportunity, and you can translate that into an analytics project that you can then take action. I think that's a really important skill that also meets what they need in the long run. So being able to sort of break down work and break it down into sort of problems, areas to explore, I think is really important. And then surface that back to the stakeholders and storytell that back, basically, so that they can take action on that and use that in their work. I think that's a very important skill. The second on this is more technical. So we have this concept of full stack analysts at Wise. And this is something that we're trying to have in our team. So this is analysts that work across all the different sort of areas of analytics as a broader area. So for example, you can do some data engineering work. You can take a data set and make it into a scalable data asset for people to use. And you can also do some of that consultancy work, so partner with people, problem solve with people, and also analyze the data so you can get to insights from that. So really focusing on like analytics across all the analytics lifecycle, which I think some companies are quite segmented in terms of you have data engineers, you have consultants, you have analysts, and here we like to make it as much as possible a full stack. So you're doing a lot of that stuff, which I think is amazing because it gives you a great opportunity to develop and learn, and also gives you a lot of variety in your day to day. But obviously you flex on that for certain people and just for certain roles. But that's broadly what we look for. And then I guess the last thing is like domain experience in HR is something we look for, not like as we don't exclude people that don't, but it's something that I think gives you a certain knowledge and context which you can then use when you do the job. So it's definitely something that helps. We want analytics people that understand HR. So that's something we're actively looking for.
That's fantastic. That full stack is interesting. So thinking about what that translates to when it comes to recruiting, that it's a pretty high bar.
Mm.
Have you found that that changes your pool of candidates in a certain way, or that you're having to kind of work through that in a different way?
Yeah, I'm sure my recruiter is laughing right now because this is what she says. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one, right? Like you don't need to have done everything to do that, and like not all of my analysts have done data engineering work or something like that before they joined. But it's like you want to learn and develop in that skill as well. Maybe not for it to be your primary skill, but you have an appetite and you have a willingness to learn and you might have experience in SQL or Python, which gives you great foundation in that space, so you can build on that. So it's not like looking for people that have done everything, but people that are willing and able to do everything, I guess, in terms of the full stack model.
That's very cool to hear. And yeah, that's an exciting role to kind of be able to kind of
Yeah.
own and build and grow and learn.
Yeah.
Um, let's think about that Austin role for a second. For
Yeah.
somebody that, let's say somebody gets hired into that role, and now we're a year forward, as they
Mhm.
look back on their past year, what does success look like for them in that role? Or like, what was it that made them successful? What kind of projects did they knock out of the park? Just maybe a little hypothetical here, maybe kind of dream painting, but it'd be great to hear.
Yeah. So I think like I, I think in that if we're talking about the Austin role in particular, I think you were embedded in your team, so you've got those partnerships to leverage, and you've started to use those partnerships to shape your work and ensure that your stakeholder group is involved in analytics output that the people analyst is driving. So you're the voice of your stakeholder in terms of people analyst output. And I imagine after a year, you will feel like embedded in Wise. You feel like you're up to speed with everything. You've got on top of our tool stack, all those kind of things as well, obviously. You've had measurable impact, so you can point to some a project that you've done that's led to some kind of change or has influenced the decision. Probably after a year, multiple decisions, but obviously decisions are on various different levels in terms of impact. So you can point to that impact. That would probably be my top things.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's a fantastic illustration for the role. And so we're hitting the 30-minute mark. So just for everyone on the call, make sure you're kind of collecting your questions, get your questions ready, because at 45 we will go off the record and we'll move into Q&A. And I've got a couple that are teed up already, but that's also a great time for people to ask really anything you might want to ask for James. But I've got a couple more for him in the meantime. So James, as you're thinking ahead for people analytics and just having been in the space for a little while, as you're looking forward, what are some trends that are shaping this like next phase as people analytics move forward? And are there certain innovations you're excited about?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the elephant in the room on this question, right, is AI, and I think that's massively shaping
Yeah.
analytics, and I think it will continue to shape all analytics across every area. I think it's a great opportunity in people analytics in particular because as you look at things like topic modeling or working with doing NLP or anything like that, you historically it was challenging. You'd be building models maybe in R or something like that, and you weren't sure the level of value you're getting from that. And I think Gen AI in particular has completely changed that. And there's a lot of opportunities now to transform a lot of unstructured data into more structured data so that we can get insights from it. So that's one of the exciting opportunity areas. I also think how people interact with like analytics products is going to change probably in the future. I don't know to the extent, but I think there'll be more of like that Gen AI layer on top of it, so people self-serve. I think again that's an interesting opportunity for people analytics to help shape that. I do think we're also like people this Netflixization, for want of a better word, of just generally everything in terms of customer experience is coming a little bit more to BI tools now, which is great to see, and like how how they serve customers with their outputs or data customers. So I think that's sort of connected to that in the same way as well. I also think this concept of work style analytics is pretty cool. I don't know if you've heard of this one, Richard, but like on how people interact with like tools and how people sort of interact with systems. So there's a lot of analytics within that that I think is really exciting. So a lot of like passive listening in that space, and this is something we hope to explore in that with that Austin role. So doing more in that passive listening, bringing that data, and I think there's a really interesting data asset that's emerging more and more, especially as we constantly collect more data, and leveraging that in our decisions is quite exciting. So they're probably my three.
Yeah, that's an exciting wrinkle for that Austin role too, to kind of talk about listening in that sense of it's not just that active listening, but that kind of passive side and how you do that. And I like that term work style analytics.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it explains
I can't
a
take
really
credit for
nice
that,
spot.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
no, it's a
I
great
think
term
that
though.
was
And it's one that I agree. I think we're going to see that more and more as we kind of think about the kind of Anthropic just released an economic index that was based on all of the questions people have asked Anthropic over the past year that shows which professions are most likely to be disrupted. So kind of an example of work style analytics is they analyzed how people worked with the Anthropic tool to get a really profound insight out of it. So I could see us doing that a lot more across our enterprise systems.
Definitely. And I think like, and also from on the AI front, like how work is done is going to be
Yeah,
a really interesting question, and something that people analytics should be taking the lead on in terms of answering for organizations in the future, because I think that's going to change for quite a few jobs. Obviously, we don't know to the effect, but I think that it's an exciting opportunity to explore that more and build out data
absolutely.
into it. Yeah.
I think you hit some of the major trends on the head there. So as we talked about people analytics and AI a little bit, let's talk about career advice. So if somebody's a little bit earlier in their career, what advice would you pass on, especially with everything changing? And maybe
Yeah.
this is an interesting kind of wrinkle based on that last conversation too. As platforms come about, as AI comes about, as automation is happening, that entry level role in people analytics is rapidly shifting. Do you have any advice for people that are kind of in that mix, that are thinking about graduating into the space, that are thinking about entering roles in people analytics?
Absolutely. I think like, so it's a really interesting question. I think like it's a question that probably a lot of particularly early careers, roles and industries are thinking about. I think and for people analytics in particular, I focus on understanding both the technicals and the domain. So understanding, well, I guess there's two domains, right? So there's analytics as a domain and there's people and HR as a domain. So I'd focus on understanding both of those because they're the combo that's going to lead to success in a people analytics role. Secondly, I think about the technicals as well, and I think that it's really important not to neglect this. Obviously, with AI, it's easier to code, but it's also an easier opportunity to learn how to code. And things like SQL, for example, just to take one example of a coding language that I'm sure many listeners are familiar with, but that's a great example on a language which is going to teach you how data should be structured, which is even more important as a skill now, as we're generating so much more data. So I think like definitely lean into the technicals and learn SQL and a complementary like Python or R, because they're going to teach you stats, they're going to teach you how to model, they're going to teach you how to answer the business questions which are going to lead to your success. And I think like, I guess that's my final point. Like, analytics isn't really about the analytics. I guess it's about the problem or the opportunity you're going after. So it's about the insight or action you drive basically from it. So I think focusing on like problem solving, consultancy, those kind of skills is also a very fruitful area.
James, you just changed my mind on SQL in an
Yeah.
interesting way. Because like at some point in time, I knew SQL. I've since forgotten SQL. And ChatGPT is better at SQL than me now.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I've been telling a lot of HR folk it's probably not worth learning SQL at this point because the ChatGPT is better. If you need to get
Yeah.
something done, it can do it. But the phrase you use there of SQL teaches you how data should be structured is a really profound piece of learning to code. Even if
Yeah.
you're not writing the code, it teaches you how the data model happens and works. I think there's
Yeah.
something really profound there. So I just want to reiterate that and how much I appreciate that thoughtfulness.
Yeah. And I think like on the coding question, it's an interesting one. Like, how is AI going to impact coding? I think GitHub looked at this, and someone on the webinar, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the outcome of this was that they found that there were more people coding than ever before because its coding is easier, the barrier to entry is lighter, but you still need to understand the concepts that are underpin coding to be able to code. So if you can code, coding with AI is going to make it a lot better and a lot more impactful, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
but you
Yeah.
still need to learn how to code. Okay, I got to get back to the books. Speaking of that, we had a couple questions come in around resources. And what do you use to stay up to speed in the space? Do you have any resources you recommend? Especially if someone's trying to go full stack. I think that's a really interesting kind of novel
Yeah.
space where you might have some recommendations for folk.
Yeah, so there's LinkedIn is an amazing resource, and especially in people analytics, there's like Richard, like such as yourself, there's some amazing people that share some really interesting stuff. So I think getting on there, following some of the key names is going to give you a lot of information in your feed, just generally. I like a couple of people answer podcasts, so I'll plug those. Directionally Correct's a great
Please.
podcast, and the name is
Yeah.
amazing. Um, and Inside 222 does a great podcast with David Green where they cover a lot of this stuff. So that's kind of how you stay up to date. I think like People Analytics is really fortunate because it's got this amazing community around it because it's quite a specific field. So if you can lean into that by going to those events that, different people host or these webinars or something like that, I feel like you can take a little bit from it. So that's kind of how I stay up to date. I'm constantly saving on LinkedIn to go and look at stuff. So yeah.
I save things more often than I go back and look at my saved things. That's my problem. I've got so many phenomenal things saved that are just in there now.
Yeah. But
Got to make a good habit.
on this on programming, learning, coding generally, I think the easiest way, and like this is what I say to people that are about to start doing it, is like find something where you can apply it. So like in your job, find a project you can apply it on, do a short little gig on something, and then you can really see how you can leverage it. It's kind of hard to sit down. Well, I've always found it hard to sit down and do an online course where you learn to write SQL or R or something like that. I think it's good when you can basically just go and solve a problem with it, basically.
Absolutely. Okay, so last question for this section, then we'll move into the kind of more open Q&A. Thinking about building influence. One of the things that you mentioned kind of too early is like as much as it's technical, it's also a very personal and very like change management oriented function. Could you give any advice to people that are looking to build influence or connect with their organization in more like strengthen that relationship?
Yeah, I think like so the number one thing you can do is focus on the right problems or opportunities, basically. So make sure that you're going after something that people care about and it's going to have a big impact. Some people and teams are struggle with like resource. How do I have the resource to do everything that is coming my way? Or like how do I basically optimize my resource so it's best effective? But I think focusing on what's going to have the biggest impact. So thinking about like, oh, what are the metrics I want to move? So, for example, classic one might be you want to move engagement. Well, have a think about what you think is going to have the most impact on that, and then go after that as an opportunity area. I think that's my first thing. I'd say, secondly, build strong partnerships, like build partnerships with people that are going to help you amplify your work and the impact from your work. So thinking about like, who do I know is really bought into data? How can I support them more? Or this person's working on this project, which I think we can apply a lot of data around. How can I get involved with them? So build those partnerships to leverage. And I think going back to that point, generally, Richard, is like analytics isn't about analytics. I've said that once, but I'll say it again. But it's about like the impact that you drive and from the analytics. So it doesn't matter. I know I've talked a little bit about like quite a lot of technical stuff, but it actually doesn't really matter about how fancy the model is. It might be just be an A/B test or some descriptive stats. But if it tells a neat story that you can then leverage and have impact on, I think that's the most important thing.
That's fantastic. Well, James, thank you so much for sharing everything with us today. I know I walked away with some new learnings about the space and just a deep appreciation for the work you're doing at Wise when it comes to that project management connection, the depth of the experience. even that you said A/B test there at the end is just a really delightful thing that you guys are digging into that spot. So thank you so much, James, for that. And with that, we will close this part of the webinar and we'll move into Q&A.
Thanks, Richard.